And welcome back for this Coffee with the Editor. We are still in Cape Town at the International Railway Safety Council's conference here, hosted by the Railway Safety Regulator. And I'm with Traxtion CEO, James Holley. Thank you for joining me. James, nice to see you.
Thanks, Philippa.
You've obviously been very busy.
Our business is continuing to grow. More and more locomotives coming out of Roslyn into the field. I think we've now got 13 locomotives under active rebuild, 6 locomotives on their way to go into service into different countries, different customers. By about April next year, those 13 are going to be done. Then we are seeking our next phase of growth and opportunity, which is a nice problem to have.
Nice problem to have, and that kind of aligns with open access, and there's some milestones that needs to be met in the coming weeks, like by the end of October and beginning of November. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it completely aligns with open access. I think is really the next big phase for growth. You know, the freight opportunity in South Africa is obviously very large on the one hand, but then on the other hand, we've got an economy that really needs to see rail freight grow. You know, we've got people like the Gain Institute and Stellenbosch saying that last year we lost 6% of GDP, this year we're going to lose 4.5% of GDP because of the drop in rail freight volumes. And as a consequence, I think it's an interesting time for South Africa because there's a need for the implementation of more train capacity. But at the same time, there's an interesting opportunity because obviously in March last year we had the new rail policy that was the national rail policy that was approved by Cabinet, which sets the way for the implementation of reform. So I guess now the next steps are is the infrastructure manager going to unlock the implementation of that reform? When are we going to see the rail economic regulator in place? Do we need the rail transportation bill in order to see the effective implementation of reform? Those are all of the questions that are going to have to be answered in the next while. And that sets the framework for reform. But of course, we have to look at the economics associated with reform, and we're going to have to understand the efficiencies associated with our ability to operate efficiently, given potential problems with the track infrastructure condition.
All right, so you put out something interesting on LinkedIn, and it was obviously your thoughts around the financials with Transnet, and then you ended it quite positively in terms of private sector participation and investment from the private sector. But taking that into account, and in what you guys are doing, and I'm assuming that that's all progressing well. What is the real next tangible aspect to this?
So look, we're still in discussions with Transnet on the slot that we won under the Phase 1 slot sales from Kroonstad to East London, which of course is a pilot project. Okay, the sort of billion-dollar question, if you want, is how do you see or how as a country do we solve the problem of the massive investment that you have to see into the railways? And when I mean the railways, I mean the whole ecosystem of our railways, in order to see us getting back to 226 million tonnes and well beyond, because 226 million tonnes, according to the analysis that we had done and studies that we'd done into the commercial opportunity or the commercial requirement for freight to move in railways is about 60 million tonnes beyond that. So we should be up at about 300 million tonnes. And so we're about 150 million tonnes behind now and where we think the railways should be in South Africa. And then from there you get into expansion of new mines and other opportunities to take you beyond there. So that's a huge amount of additional capacity that needs to come on stream. But to see that capacity come on stream, I think the first thing that we've got to solve as a country is how do we solve the issue of the backlog maintenance problem into the national infrastructure. In the Transnet results presentation, that they note that the backlog maintenance due to funding constraints is a binding constraint on operations. Area analysis is showing that there's about 30 billion rand of maintenance underspend in the last 11 years. Now, that's something that an issue that needs to be looked at quickly and in totality, and I do believe that the National Logistics Crisis Committee is seized with trying to find a solution for that. And the reason I say that's so important is that train sets are so expensive. So when you're going to venture into the decision to invest into a train set at sort of circa 250 million rand per train set, you need to be absolutely certain that you're going to get the efficiencies from that train set in order to be able to invoice enough, in order to be able to pay back your lenders, pay your staff, and pay your and deliver your shareholders a return. Now, you can only achieve that efficiency on top of efficient infrastructure. And if the infrastructure itself is in a condition where you can't achieve the cycle times and the turnaround times, well, then rail reform is just a nice thing to talk about. Okay, and what concerns me is that there's a danger that unless we find that ability to invest into the infrastructure, rail reform is going to be a nice thing that we spoke about. And we have to find that solution for the investment, tens of billions of rands into investment into the infrastructure. And in the context of a constrained Transnet balance sheet and in the context of a national fiscus with highly competing requirements for its money, okay, how do we solve the question of therefore getting private sector money into the infrastructure? And that's something that I think the whole economy really, in this moment, needs to be seized with.
Because it's not just the constraints from a passenger side, which also impacts, the value chain within our sector, but that freight side is a far greater impact from an economic perspective, from a jobs. I mean, the mines have just put out notice now that they're going to be retrenching because our rail is not supporting. And do you think we're going to be seeing less talk, more action, or are we seeing action?
Well, I think that the National Logistics Crisis Committee is the perfect forum in order for us to actually see tangible results. I mean, I can't think of a better basis to get solutions other than the most important stakeholders in the country, which is government, business, and the unions together, finding solutions and crafting solutions in the context of the recognition that we're in a crisis. I can't see a better platform for the achievement of tangible results. I think there's also been a recognition of the depth of the issue, and I know that the quality of people from business that were represented in the crisis committee is exceptionally strong. I don't think we could have had better representation there. So I think that's our best chance, and I just really hope it's successful.
Me too. So we're here in Cape Town at the International Railway Safety Council conference hosted by the Railway Safety Regulator. Traxtion is here. Safety is key.
I'm presenting later today why we perform well from a safety perspective. We've got the equivalent of a 5-star safety rating. We've held it consecutively now for about 7 years. We've had 0 injuries, I think, for 4 of the last 7 years. What's translated, how we achieved that, and it really just comes down to training and the quality of the people that we have in the team. And we tell the story of the Traxtion Rail Training Centre, sort of circa 18 years of existence, and how we've built that up and how we focused on all of the modules that are needed in order to translate into effective operations for ourselves, and we focused on how we work within our community to bring people into the training school, and all of the accreditations and certifications that we've got in the training school. Because ultimately, if you give people the right tools to enable them to be successful, it translates into broad-scale success across the entire business. You can have amazing assets, but ultimately the decision to buy the assets came from people that had the right knowledge and tools and experience in order to make the right procurement decision. You can have amazing processes and procedures, but those processes and procedures were designed again by people with the requisite skills in order to be able to put them in place. So that's ultimately what we're talking about, and I think that's why have been so successful in terms of our safety record. The RSR is an extremely important stakeholder in our business and of course in the broader industry, so another element of this is it's important to show support to an important stakeholder.